General Admiral von Friedeberg will sign first.
The newsreels reported it as the greatest battlefield surrender in history.
7 clauses, and no mere scrap of paper. Clause 2 is tapped out by Morse, the signal for the ceasefire, which reads, all hostilities on land, on sea, and in the air by German forces to cease by 0800 hours.
So in the first week of May 1945, 1 million German troops were being rounded up throughout Europe. Long columns of dispirited men, so many of them youngsters still in their teens, now the prisoners of the Allied forces. In a message to the Chief of the Air Staff, Montgomery said, in Western Europe, we have no Germans left to fight.
As the German forces in Europe collapsed, there was an important British victory over the Japanese in the Far East. 40 years ago today, Rangoon was captured, which effectively ended the Burma campaign. As Brian Hanrahan reports, the victory came after a race against the May monsoon, which would have stopped the advance.
The battle to recover Burma had been as much against the jungle as the Japanese. 3 years before, the British, outnumbered, disorganized and inexperienced, had been driven out. It had been a long walk back, learning to live with malaria and monsoons. Wingate created his Chindits, Merrill his marauders to probe deep into Japanese-held territory. In the end, Rangoon fell unopposed to an amphibious assault. The port and its installations were captured intact. General Slim, the head of the 14th Army, the forgotten army they called themselves, reminded Europe that the Japanese war went on.
But the Japanese is a tough enemy, and much must be done before he will admit defeat. So far, in Southeast Asia, we, the British, have had to fight with meager resources. But now the resources that defeated Germany are becoming available for use against Japan.
Rangoon's fall was timely. Lord Mountbatten, the Supreme Commander, arrived for the victory parade as the monsoon started. He told the men they'd fought in the worst conditions and climate in the world. 100,000 of them got the Burma Star, 34 the VC. There were more VCs won in Burma than any other campaign of the war.
A woman who was once told she'd never have children has given birth to sextuplets. Jane Underhill was warned she couldn't have a family because she suffered from the slimmer's disease, anorexia nervosa. The next few days will be critical for the babies, who together weigh a total of just 9 pounds. This report from Mike Mackay.
The Underhill sextuplets arrived 3 months premature and weighing in total just over 9 pounds. Mrs. Jane Underhill had become pregnant after receiving treatment for infertility, brought on by anorexia nervosa, the slimming disease. Doctors say that nowadays, babies born this early have a 30 to 40% chance of survival worldwide. But the Rosie Maternity Hospital is a good modern one, though the babies did use up all the existing incubator facilities and 3 more had to be hired in. The doctors now say that they'll know better within 72 hours what their long-term prospects are. In the meantime, Mr. Underhill has been unemployed for some time, and there's no doubt that the exclusive contract that he and his wife have signed with the national newspaper for their personal stories will come in financially useful. Today, at a hospital news conference, the consultant paediatrician involved in the multiple deliveries spoke first about the operation itself.
From our side, it ran very well. That we were able to turn out 6 of everything, really. 6 resuscitators, 6 paediatricians, 12 nurses, and appropriate backup support. And that side went, I have to say it, amazingly well. We were surprised how well it did go. We were expecting all sorts of catastrophes with everyone tripping over everyone else, but it went very smoothly.
In the village of Burwell, where Jane Underhill has lived all her life, neighbours said today that they were thrilled with the news.
Now tonight's football in Division 2, Carlisle against Charlton is a late kick-off. The latest score we have, Carlisle 0, Charlton 1. Division 3, Wigan 5, Doncaster 2. York 3, Rotherham 0. Division 4, Colchester 1, Swindon 1. Halifax 2, Hereford 1. Southend 0, Rochdale 2. Graham Gooch hit the first double century of the season and the 4th of his career to strengthen his England claims. But it wasn't enough for champions Essex, who drew with last year's runners-up Nottinghamshire at Trent Bridge. Kent drew with Surrey and Lancashire beat Gloucestershire. Glamorgan's 9-wicket win over Somerset puts them at the top of the Britannic County Championship table. And now the main news again. The epidemic in Staffordshire has now been diagnosed as Legionnaire's disease. The Alliance is celebrating their success in yesterday's local elections, and there was a row in the Commons at the end of the debate on the bill to ban experiments on human embryos. The Queen Mother became the victim of an accident today, but only for demonstration purposes. She was seeing a new radio alarm system designed to safeguard the elderly and disabled. Her welcome in Newbury was from the younger residents of the town. Inside, the computer that controls the alarm was waiting to go through its paces. A radio worn around the neck activates the computer if the wearer is in trouble.
Who it is who's in trouble? Today, Ma'am, it's you who are in trouble, I would say.
A call is automatically put through to a trained assistant, and help is at hand.
Good afternoon, Your Majesty. My name is Julia Somerville. I am the duty operator. Thank you for switching on this system this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Sylvia.
And now some late news. Reports are coming in that police have removed explosives which were planted in a car outside a building where Trade Minister Norman Lamont was holding his surgery. Mr. Lamont had been handed a note saying the car, parked at Kingston in Surrey, contained explosives and hand grenades. And there'll be more on that news in Newsnight at 10:35 on BBC Two. But from me, good night and have a good weekend.
Hello. Well, a pretty cool and for many of us showery weekend as well, but at least tomorrow should be a reasonable day for sport. The reason for the cool temperatures, well, it's this drift of gentle drift of northerly winds coming down across the country. Now we have to watch these fronts too, because these are going to spread some rain into extreme western parts of Britain later tomorrow, and then down into other western and southern parts of the country over the course of the weekend and into Monday as well. Let's try to put some weather on that. That's the position we have just at the moment. A lot of cloud in eastern and northern Britain with some light showers in places, especially near those coasts. There are some breaks in the cloud, particularly in the west and south of Britain, but breaks could occur anywhere. And this does mean that ground frost could occur briefly just anywhere in the country round about dawn tomorrow. But these are typical air temperatures: 5 Celsius, 41 Fahrenheit, 2 Celsius in the west, 36 degrees Fahrenheit. A fairly cool night, but for many of us, just missing frost. Then tomorrow, well, a mixed bag of weather. Still some light showers in eastern coastal counties of England there. Some showers too over eastern and northern parts of Scotland. Many of us having a dry and fairly bright day tomorrow. Again, the further south and west you go, the more sunshine you get, although even there will be rather more cloud at times than there has been today. Later on, brightening up too in some eastern parts, but at the same time it's going to start clouding over in western parts of Britain, and some rain will get into Northern Ireland by the end of the day, during the evening. Again, it isn't going to be an excitingly warm day anywhere. 13 Celsius is just 55 degrees Fahrenheit. The best of the temperatures in those sheltered southern-facing coasts down there, 14 or perhaps even 15 degrees Celsius, the upper 50s Fahrenheit. Then looking farther ahead, well, that's the chart for the middle of Sunday. These fronts bringing some rain across the west of the country. Still those northerly drifting winds coming along and keeping temperatures low. And that's the position we expect to see rain, at least for a time, over Northern Ireland and Wales and western parts of England, mainly dry in the east and north. And then on Monday, very similar, still cool, but they're brightening up in Northern Ireland, the rain getting down into many western and southern parts of England and Wales, and still only 13 or 14 degrees Celsius at best. Looking farther ahead for Europe, it's still a very showery picture everywhere. The weather hasn't settled down. You have to go very far south and east to be guaranteed unbroken sunshine, and pretty cool in many places too. Later on at 11:20, I'll be throwing up some information on the sea crossings. That's on BBC Two later on. But meanwhile, from me, a very good night to you.
There are 3 major documentaries marking the 40th anniversary of VE Day next week. On Tuesday on BBC One, D-Day to Berlin tells the story of the last year of the war, using dramatic colour film shot by Hollywood director George Stevens and seen here for the first time. It follows the progress of the American troops from Normandy through liberated Paris to a meeting with the Russians on the River Elbe, and finally to Berlin. Timewatch on BBC Two on Wednesday tells the story of the battle for Berlin with Charles Wheeler.
Fighting in Germany ended with one of the most savage battles of the war. capture by the Red Army of Berlin. We talk to survivors from both sides and report on the tensions between the Russians and the Western Allies in the aftermath of the battle.
And on BBC One on Wednesday, the story of relief, sadness and celebrations on the day we won the war.
Along history, we have never seen a greater day than this.
3 programmes to mark the 40th anniversary of VE Day on BBC Television.
Starting on BBC Two in just over 15 minutes, A World About Us Special presents a moving and powerful film which centres around 4 Vietnam veterans unable to wake from the living nightmare of the war, the haunted heroes. Here on One, the final episode of Brian Clark's serial Late Starter. Mary Brett's mother has died. At her funeral, she and Edward at last come face to face.